dating in your 20s with like one word, what word would that be?
One word I would use to describe the dating scene at the moment would be exhausting.
If you had to describe the dating scene with one word or one sentence, what would you say?
I would say fast.
Slow.
Exciting.
Learning, I feel is a good one.
Oh, God.
That statement you said about going camping. Oh, you don't want to say that.
So I can. Last weekend, I've gone like a little annual camping trip with my family. My brother and my dad have done it since I was like 4 years old. It's something pretty important to me. But this year, my brother has gone through a bit of a hard time with a divorce last year, and also my dad's in a pretty rocky situation with his partner. Hey, I'm Dos, 29, soon to be 30, and I've lived around Fremantle and Scarborough my whole life. My parents split when I was pretty young. I didn't really know what was going on. I was 4 years old, but it was like, it definitely impacted me. Yeah, there was a phase where I just didn't know what was going on. My childhood, I've always looked at love being like the right person, you're with them forever and like, that's it. Yeah, this like dream mother-father figure kind of split, and that was interesting, like hard to deal with as a 5-year-old because it just didn't make sense. I think it's so common for like major issues and people to separate. Me particularly, I might have more of a negative outlook on the future of like a solid relationship. Yeah, so much doesn't work. Like so many cases, it doesn't work out. For like a 6-year period there, I was pretty back-to-back relationships. Awesome, like loved it to bits, but I guess I was really scared of being single. Yeah, I didn't know what it meant, and I didn't know how it looked, after being a teenager, because I was, from my teens to like mid-20s, I was just in relationships, and that's what was safe to me. Dating in my 20s. Interesting, I guess I was coming back from like being my teens and early 20s. I was in relationships, and I guess I was scared that I didn't know how to date, and that was probably a big factor of not wanting to become single and start dating again, is because I was like, how the hell do you do this? Like, how does this work? Yeah, it was a mix through friends of friends and also online. Sometimes really fun, sometimes solid connections, and then sometimes like, do not want to be here right now. Or very early on, like within the first 10 minutes, it's like, there's no chance, like this is gonna work, and it would end there pretty much. Dating apps have been pretty prevalent and strong. Yeah, when I started to properly get single around like 23, 24. Yeah, I think there's so much casual shit that happens. Yeah, I don't think it's healthy to be constantly, there's this like grass is greener kind of dangling energy to it, which I think a lot of people struggle with, especially if you're in a city. You've got this almost infinite pool of prospective future partners. It's the exact same if you were at like a little tiny IGA in the country and there's one can of soup you can pick from, versus now where you have a whole aisle of 1 billion different cans at different prices or whatever, and you're like, oh, no, this one. Oh, no, I might go this one. Oh, no, this is the best. This is the best. And then a new one pops up. And you're like, oh, no, this is like, this is the best. It's just, the choices people have is changing as well. This weird little uncommittal world that we're living in.
What about like conflict and your ability to talk about hard things?
With conflict, I never really saw it between my parents. My dad's pretty bad with that. I think a lot of men are pretty bad with conflict, really bad. Never showed it, or just to a degree ran away towards the end. And yeah, never really like addressed the hard topics. But yeah, there's definitely healthy conflict, which I'm learning about, you know, addressing things early. I book a trip and run away. I'm joking. Yeah, no, I'm trying to think of when's like the last thing that got serious. I think subconsciously I'm like, probably haven't been pursuing anything mega serious right now. I was in a pretty stable, healthy, content relationship for a while. And I just felt like it was too early to be on this kind of railroad. I just saw this comfortable, safe life paved out in front of me. And I was like, I want more than this. And yeah, I think that's where I guess I took a risk and leapt out of that. And that's probably been the big driver for me chasing those at the moment. At that 20, 24, 25 point, I guess I had like my first really unhealthy relationship. I noticed how negatively it impacted me from a mental health point of view. I just sculpted my world around trying to make this work. Didn't see my friends, didn't see my family. Every day related some way to like who I was seeing at the point. It just really, really hyper-focused on this person and didn't put any energy back towards myself or my friends or my family. And then there was a point where I was like, damn, I haven't seen my friends or my family, and like people are pulling away from me, and that really snapped me out. I was like, I'm starting to lose like the people I value so much in my world. And I think that's when I had a big switch where I was like, this is what I need to focus on right now. Wasn't healthy to start with, heavily anxiety driven. Yeah, everything I did was based around it, and everything I just was so unclear in my world. It shook me, like to the point where I couldn't work. Every day I'd be struggling to go to work. I just saw how much energy I was losing towards, yeah, this relationship, which wasn't healthy. I think my friends helped me through being single, but it's just general support, like mental support. By being, you know, that person to bounce how I'm feeling off and, you know, get second opinions, understand like their take on it, and just reassure me about how I'm feeling. And just genuinely spending time with someone to help get your mind off whatever you're struggling with is so critical to me. Yeah, I really respect and take on board whatever my friends say very heavily, because I trust that they have my best interests at heart. My mum was with her a lot, and she was like my world, and still is. I don't remember this, but she's told me this. She was pretty content being a single mum, raising 2 boys. And then when I was 6, she met my stepdad, Ben, who has pretty much become a second dad and such a huge part of my world. So I don't think my parents splitting have a negative outlook on what love should be and what's possible and how it can be shaped. My lifestyle at the moment, I have a lot of options to travel, and I guess it's kind of selfish, but for the past few years, it's just been me as the priority, and it's been great. You know, within a week's notice to be able to travel to the other side of the country, or going on a huge road trip throughout like Kyrgyzstan with a $400 piece of shit car and getting lost. Anything that stimulates me is what I try to pursue. Ideal relationship in the future would be someone who I can share my world with, share their world with. And I think a big problem I've probably had previously is whoever I'm seeing doesn't slot nicely into my world and my friend group. I've always been a very future forward, like thinking 5-10 years. I've recently started to pull away from that a bit more and just be more like, okay, yeah, like this is good now. And if it's not good, then okay, it's not good. And then it doesn't need to like be so solid. Yeah, I'm totally hopeful about sharing that experience with someone. I don't think there's one perfect person, but I think if you share your life with someone and it's working, I think that's pretty good, and it's like healthy to a degree. I guess, yeah, for me, like a message would be, yeah, for other single people out there, just strengthen your support network and focus on that, like your friends, your family. Yeah, make sure that's solid.
Yeah, always tinkering.
I'm Jodie Maile. I'm 28. I grew up in Sydney, but I've lived in Melbourne for 10 years now. I work as a stained glass artist, and that's kind of my own studio practice, working with other people, doing workshop, subcontracted work. I would hope that someone would describe me as quite positive. Enough stuff has happened in my life where I feel like I just try and stay really positive. I feel like I had a good experience, especially in high school. I had lots of like different friends. I definitely was less confident in like dating and stuff like that. I feel like I kind of sat back and watched my friends do lots of that stuff. They were like really confident, always running around with boys and stuff like that. So I feel like I kind of separated myself from that stuff. I felt like I was interested in different things and I like looked different. So I feel like that kind of made me like a bit more unsure of like where I fit. Beauty standards were so damaging most of the time, and it was very much like blonde and like look like this and that sort of stuff. And I also feel like in media, the like funny, intelligent or like self-driven woman was always kind of separate. Seeing that reiterated in high school where my hot blonde friends finding that path very easily. Once I got out of school and like into the world, it kind of carried through, yeah, where I was like, oh, someone like is interested in me. Oh my God, this is amazing. And this might never happen again, so I've got to like hold on tight. So my first relationship set the tone for kind of all the ones to come afterwards. I was with my boyfriend at the time at my parents' house. We were just like watching some like show on Netflix. And I had just found out that one of my close high school friends who had had cancer for a few years, that it had spread to his brain and he only had like a month to live. I was obviously upset about that and kind of thinking about it and like crying about it. And in the midst of crying about it, he was like, I have something to tell you. And I was like, oh, he's going to tell me that, you know, you've got to like come to terms with that this person's going to die, and like, because that's what I was thinking about. And he was just like, yeah, I cheated on you 4 months ago. I don't even know how to like process that now, which also thinking back to is just like crazy. I think I stayed in that relationship at that time too because there was other stuff going on and I wasn't in a good, strong place to be like, I feel like I've got self-worth, I feel like I can walk away. After that, I realized that this thing that had been rotting the relationship, and the reason that we were fighting so much was because they'd done that, and they knew that they'd done that. I spent all this time worrying if I was the problem, and then it was so like confusing to learn that I was putting in all this effort to this relationship that obviously didn't mean the same thing to the other person. I think what originally drew me into that relationship was feeling seen by someone, and maybe that was kind of the first time where I felt like that. I think what ultimately got me out was just having friends that were seeing it all happen, and they knew it was bad and they knew I needed to get out, but they were just there for whatever it was that day. The current modern dating scene, I think, is a mess more than anything. And there's probably a lot of reasons why and a lot of different factors, but a constant kind of thread throughout my 20s and dating has just been like people just not knowing what they want, not understanding how they feel, but kind of refusing to process that on their own, and instead just kind of like going with other people kind of recklessly. Other dating experiences in my 20s have been lots of situationships. Yeah, mostly lots of these vague, undisclosed things where you can't call this person an ex, but also there's kind of nothing else to call them. More often than not, I probably wanted a relationship, but felt like for some reason that was off the table, or actually that I couldn't ask, that I was asking too much. It's like this weird secret thing that you can't talk about for some reason. Or something bad's gonna happen. It's like, you know, you're still coming to my house every 2 days and like we're still going out for dinner, but we can't talk about it. We can't address the fact that, you know, we both like each other or something like that. And then it makes me feel intense. Like it makes me feel like I'm some like, I don't know, like crazy. Even just like telling someone that you like them when you know they like you, like you're getting every signal. Somehow being the one to bring that up just makes you feel like a ball breaker, or like a, I don't know. My self-confidence has evolved a lot over my 20s. I think coming out of a bad relationship and being cheated on, I felt really defeated, but I also felt like I'm not going to let this define me, and I don't want to be like jealous, and I don't want to be the person with trust issues because I didn't sign up for that, like someone else did that. It really messes with your head. And so I feel like I overcorrected by, in my next relationship, being like, oh, I don't care. You want to go and hang out with like all these girls, and like, that's fine. And like, there was so much I didn't question. And in hindsight, I've even realized that like that person cheated on me too, which realizing retrospectively is weird. What I eventually got to was like actually just accepting the things that have happened to you is so much better for your like self-worth and self-identity. Looking back at dating in my 20s, what I thought was a type was actually a pattern. It almost feels easier to go through dating a bunch of like shitty guys that aren't treating you right than admitting your worth and admitting what you actually deserve and what you actually want, and then putting up the boundaries and like the hard work that it takes to actually get that. Yes, I definitely have a hard time accepting that I can be loved and that I can be treated properly, but it's been a really interesting shift to go from these relationships where I was like always fighting for the bare minimum, and then actually having to like stop and just be safe is like so foreign. When my current relationship started, I felt relief more than anything. I think after 2 or so years of being single and just fighting for like scrap of attention or like commitment or honesty, someone who was just so open and honest, really great at communicating, was just like such a relief. Entering a dynamic where it was really positive and safe and I wasn't chasing was actually a massive shock to my system, which I wasn't really like prepared for. Kind of felt like all this turmoil and like confusion and like all these big feelings, to then someone just being, I'm down and I'm here and like, I'll talk about that with you. You're still kind of fists up. I think it takes a long time and it takes a lot of intention to change tune. I think in the year or so that we've been together, my nervous system is slowly adjusting, but I think what I've realised is you kind of can't just leave all that stuff behind and be like, okay, I'm in a good relationship now, so everything will be good, because it's actually in the good relationship where all that really bad stuff kind of comes back up. The beginning of our relationship was really funny. I think because I went into it with no expectations, I didn't really know anything about him and I kind of just like took a chance. It was really fun. The biggest struggle for me in my like current relationship is realizing how much of my past is still kind of at play for me. Obviously being cheated on, trust is just almost feels like an impossible thing sometimes, and like I can't tell if I'm trusting someone or if I'm just going into it, you know, as a risk. It doesn't really feel like a tangible thing, and it's just realizing that because of things I've been through, it's not going to look the same for me, and like I am going to be triggered by things that, you know, other people might not be, and that's like a hard thing to kind of navigate. It feels really nice to just be able to think ahead. And I feel like that's something I noticed I could never do in past relationships when there was that big commitment barrier. Like, you could never make future plans because you felt like if you did, they were going to run away. It's just so nice being like, let's talk about where we would live in Europe, instead of, do you like me? Like, is this okay? Like, am I annoying you? It's like so much better than that. Love makes all the hard stuff and shitty stuff worth it, because like, nothing is guaranteed. Life is very much like a series of good stuff that happens and shitty stuff that happens, and you can't really change that. So I feel like it's just worth it because, like, why not?
If you just run that.
How do you feel? What do you usually do?
I was very available for anybody who was interested in me from a very young age. I've had like, I don't even know how many year-long 6-month relationships that were like serious, because I would like jump in straight away and I'd be like, you're the love of my life, let's fucking go. And so by the time I was like 21, I'd already been in like 7 relationships or something crazy. My name is Kayla, I'm 30 and I grew up between Melbourne and Byron. In my teenage years, I think that my friends would definitely describe me as someone who always has a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and that I was always kind of like the life of the party, overly confident, and I didn't treat boys well. Backstabber, but not to friends. So, I'm gonna go back to infant, because my parents were actually only together for like a year and a half. And so I grew up with separated, but from the get-go. And my mum and dad are very, very different. They both had a lot of different partners, like they dated heaps, both of them. So I had lots of girlfriends and boyfriends growing up, different ones all over the shop. Nothing very long-term or secure at all, but lots of fun, very interesting, lots of different pets. My mum and dad were very alternative, so like my early understandings of love were less traditional and more so about like, chosen family and community and friendship. Yeah, I just wanted it to be me, my mum and my sister, and a male energy that was like a bit off. And like a lot of the men, single men growing up in Byron Bay in the early 2000s and just not it. They're like spiritually bypassing very toxic masculinity, kind of disguised as like this hippie. And that's what I grew up with and I fucking hated it. I think from a very young age, I was really obsessed with the idea of like security and like true love because I hadn't really seen it. And so I really like wanted it for myself. When I moved out of home and dropped out of high school, I moved into a share house when I was 17. And I was like so obsessed with like 24-hour party people and factory girl and this whole kind of 60s, 70s art revival world of just like drugs and partying and cool people and fashion. And I just like, that's all I wanted. But yeah, I think that my brain wasn't ready to deal with a lot of things that I had the pressure to deal with on me from a very young age. And I think that that definitely was the reason why I would intoxicate myself, because I was dealing with like such a plethora of pressure and development and growth and anxiety and undiagnosed anxiety disorders and physical disorders and all the rest of it, and then only perpetuating that by like alcohol addiction and drug addiction. I always really struggled with romantic relationships and relationships with my family. Pretty much everything you can struggle with, I was struggling with. I just had a big chip on my shoulder about the world, even though I was quite a loving and confident, sparkly person, as people would say. I was like quite angry inside and upset all the time. And I think that's why I used drugs and alcohol and romantic relationships as like a form of self-harm almost. I would choose people that didn't treat me very well. I would stay in things with people who were abusive. I would drink every day for years, really.
So what was that fork in the road moment? Like, what happened? You know, I'm not going to live like this anymore.
I almost killed my little sister.
Yeah, just tell us about that.
Living with her at home, and because I'd moved back up to Byron for a few months to be with her because she was having problems and she was like 17. And she asked me like point blank to move home, and I wanted to be there for her, but it was pretty weird as well because I had to kind of like upheave my whole life and go back to Byron, and which isn't really what I wanted to do, but she was in a really bad way, so I decided to anyway. And then I just drank so much when I was in Byron. I like started dating a boy that was a bit younger than me, and yeah, was not doing well. Also was looking after my sister at the same time, so that was hugely problematic. And I picked her up from a house party of like teenagers, and I was really drunk, and I like crashed the car onto a roundabout and no one got hurt, and I was able to keep driving, but it was pretty bad. And like I got away with it in terms of like no one was hurt and the cops didn't come, whatever. And then I started going to AA the next week. What I was angry at my mum about was her boyfriends, and I couldn't process that the men in her life were taking advantage of her and us, therefore. I didn't understand as a young person how much she tried. She wasn't a bad person because she was with abusive men. Abusive men prey on vulnerable, beautiful women all the time. I blamed her for that, and I think as you grow up and you become ages, that your parents were when you were like 4 and you're just like running a business and still going out for nice dinners and stuff, you're like, wow, she did really good. My perspective on love has changed so much since I was in my early 20s to my late 20s, early 30s, because I've recognised my own mental health and needs, and I think I would look at love now as something that has reciprocity and resources and is always changing and growing and has seasons and is about 2 people and also their extended community and how they operate in the world and hopefully always better each other in the world or look after each other. Whereas when I was young, I thought it was just kind of like intense and cool and fun and crazy and like this thing that had to be so focused on, intensity and passion and like violence. If I could send a message back to my 20-year-old self, I would probably say, it's not your mother's fault and drinking only perpetuates the cycle. She'd be like, fuck you. Let's go to the fucking pub. My whole life, I've only ever wanted a healthy relationship. I just like didn't realize that I had to have one with myself first.